Time, can all sergeants please start your recordings?
Recording in progress.
PC recording is done. Cloud recording is done. Good afternoon, everyone.
Starting live stream. Unbelievable. Just give me a second, Pedro.
Okay, live stream is
Live
up.
stream's on.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's hybrid New York City Council meeting of the Committee on Resiliency and Waterfronts. At this time, can all panelists please turn on your videos? To minimize disruption, please place electronic devices to vibrate or silent. If you wish to submit testimony, you may send it to testimony@council.nyc.gov. Again, that's testimony@council.nyc.gov. Thank you for your cooperation. Chair, we are ready to begin.
Good afternoon. My name is Ari Kagan, and I have a privilege of chairing the Committee on Resiliency and Waterfronts. I would like to welcome each one of you to today's hearing on abandoned boats along the waterfront. The New York Harbor has a long history of abandoned vessels. Boats are abandoned for many different reasons, including structural damage from storms, collisions, and accidental groundings, commercial obsolescence, and the financial burden of maintaining these boats. Once abandoned, these vessels may become navigational and safety hazards, can be a source of environmental contamination, pose a health hazard to those who are near them, may become an attractive illegal dump sites, and may even harm the aesthetic quality of surrounding area. With the start of what is predicted to be a very active hurricane season, this problem could become even worse. I saw firsthand the state of our waterways and shorelines after Superstorm Sandy, including in Coney Island, Seagate, Shipshead Bay, and many other areas in southern Brooklyn and citywide, including in Howard Beach, and was involved with the effort to remove some derelict boats and marine debris. We want to ensure that city waterways are there for the public to use and to enjoy, not as a receptacle for garbage. The New York City Department of Parks and Recreation estimated that upwards of 500 abandoned boats are located now along the city shorelines. But as recreational boaters, elected officials, and environmental advocates have stated, it is a nearly impossible task to determine the exact number of abandoned boats, partly because there is no single agency is responsible for their removal. I remember my own efforts, too many agencies involved, and sometimes they do not coordinate with each other in these efforts. That's why we need this hearing in the first place. This can cause confusion when determining who to contact to report an abandoned boat issue. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers coordinates its wreck removal program with the U.S. Coast Guard and removes wrecked and sinking vessels that pose a hazard to navigation. The U.S. Coast Guard, on behalf of the Secretary of Homeland Security, can also remove barges from federal waters if this barge is greater than 100 gross tons and is abandoned for more than 45 days. But the Coast Guard generally will not remove these barges unless it is an emergency, or the removal can be done at no cost to Coast Guard. The New York State navigation law authorizes the sheriff to take possession of wrecked property in the name of the state. But this authority is primarily directed at the property found within the wrecks, not the vessels themselves. The New York City Department of Small Business Services has primary jurisdiction over the city's waterfront and is authorized to remove any floating or sunken vessels obstructing a wharf, to sell it if it is unclaimed for 30 days, and usually there are much more than 40 days, and to destroy or dispose of unclaimed vessels. The NYPD Harbor Unit also deals with abandoned boats or boats that have broken away from their moorings. If the boat is derelict and has little value, Then the harbor unit arranges with Department of Sanitation to have the boat delivered to one of the Department of Sanitation facilities for disposal. Removing abandoned or wrecked boats is also very, very expensive and can cost $7,000 or more, depending on the type of boat. Some states have a dedicated funding source to pay to remove or dispose these abandoned boats. New York is not one of these states, unfortunately. Even with all of these challenges surrounding removing abandoned vessels, agencies at each level of government, as well as private citizens and advocacy groups, like the American Littoral Society, have helped to remove boats and debris from the city's waterways. The Council and this committee look forward to continuing this important work to make our city more livable, more beautiful, and more enjoyable. Today, we will hear intro number 210 by Council members Areola and Brooks Powers. This bill will require the creation of the Office of Marine Debris Disposal and Vessel Surrendering. Thanks God we have this idea and our great colleagues. We will also hear intro number 461 by Council members Areola and Barelli. This bill will require the Department of Small Business Services to create and maintain a log of abandoned boats and their locations in the city littoral waters. This bill will also require the removal of abandoned boats from the city's littoral waters. We look forward to hearing from the Sheriff, the Department of Parks and Recreation, the Department of Small Business Services, and the Department of Environmental Protection during today's hearing, and working together to help ensure that city waterways are safe and beautiful. Before we begin, I would like to thank my committee staff, Senior Committee Counsel Jessica Steinberg-Albin, thank you so much. Policy Analyst Patrick Mulvihill, Senior Finance Analyst Jonathan Zeltzer, and my Legislative and Budget Director Atir Termizi for all their hard work putting this hearing together. I will now turn it over to Council Member Areola to talk about her bills.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for being a sponsor on this bill as well. Thanks to the hard work and dedication of groups like the Jamaica Bay Eco Watchers, the American Littoral Society, and many others, we've begun to see a renaissance in our waters. On any given day at Rockaway Beach, you're sure to catch a glimpse of a bottlenose dolphin flipping through the ocean near the shoreline as marine life returns to the area. Water quality is better than it's ever been at any point in living memory, and residents and visitors alike are able to engage in our bays and rivers in ways previously thought impossible. These intros seek to build upon this rebirth of New York's waterways and ensure that we can continue moving forward to make this city a better, cleaner place for all of us to enjoy. They would create a brand new Office of Marine Debris Disposal and Vessel Surrendering, which would be responsible for coordinating cleanup efforts across the city, removing abandoned boats, marine debris from our beaches and our shorelines. Additionally, this office would develop programs to encourage boat owners to dispose of their vessels responsibly through the city's programs, rather than abandon them, as many have had in the past. The city would then recycle these boats or use them for educational programs or auction them off, at least the ones that are in good condition. 520 miles of shoreline around New York City has been plagued with derelict vessels and littered with marine debris for decades. There has been little enforcement in the past, and I'm hoping for an office or division in the current agency dedicated or creating an agency that can deal with this problem and decipher which agency or government purview it falls under so that the proper fines for dumping could be given to the owner of the vessels. I look forward to working with the New York City Parks Department, the Department of Small Business Administration, and the Office of the City Sheriff to create a comprehensive, dedicated program to deal with the issues that are polluting our waterways. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Member Areola. I also would like to acknowledge my great colleagues, Councilmember Marte and Councilmember Nurs. Thank you for joining us today. I would like to now turn it over to our committee counsel, Jessica Steinberg-Albin, to go over some of the procedural items.
Thank you, Chair. I am Jessica Steinberg-Albin, counsel to the Resiliency and Waterfronts Committee of the New York City Council. Before we begin, I want to remind members of the public who are testifying remotely that you will be on mute until you are called on to testify, when you will be unmuted by the host. Please listen for your name to be called. The first panelist to give testimony today will be from the administration. New York City Sheriff Anthony Miranda, Nate Grove, Chief of Waterfront and Marine Operations of the Department of Parks and Recreation, Andrew Schwartz, Deputy Commissioner and General Counsel for the New York City Department of Small Business Services, Kevin Burns, Section Chief for the Bureau of Wastewater Treatment of the New York City Department of Environmental Protection, and Demetrius Kateas, Director of Regulatory Compliance for the Bureau of Wastewater Treatment of the New York City Department of Environmental Protection. I will now administer the oath to the administration. Please raise your right hands. Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth before these committees, and to respond honestly to council member questions? Sheriff Miranda. Is your mic on?
Yes.
Thank you. Nate Grove.
Yes.
Deputy Commissioner Andrew Schwartz.
Yes.
Kevin Burns. Yes. Okay. Can you just speak into the microphone? I don't know if we have to register it on the Zoom.
Yes.
Thank you. And Demetrius Kateas.
Yes.
Thank you. You may begin when ready.
Okay. Good afternoon, Chairman Kagan and members of the Committee for Resiliency and Waterfronts, as well as City Council members that are present. I'm Sheriff Anthony Miranda. My testimony today relates to Intro 461-22, the role of navigation law, Article 10, and the city's current practices of marine debris removal. Intro 461-22 would require the city's Department of Small Business Services to create a log of abandoned vessels and their location within the city. The proposed legislation would also require the Department of Finance, through the New York City Sheriff's Office, to inspect and identify abandoned vessels in the city's littoral waters and develop a system through which Deputy Sheriff assesses and removes these abandoned vessels. As I will describe in further detail, sheriffs in New York State engage in certain vessel recovery operations pursuant to navigation law. Navigation Law, Article 10. A subset of vessels and their cargo, referred to as wrecks or shipwrecks, are subject to a detailed state law framework with respect to the salvage under Article 10 of the New York State law. The state legislature enacted Article 10 of the State Navigation Law in 1941. Article 10 has remained substantially unchanged since that time. Earlier treaties suggested the predecessor provisions of the law, now codified in Article 10, date back to 1871. In total, the disposition proceedings of shipwrecks set forth in navigation law appear to have remained substantially the same for the past 150 years. Article 10 statutory framework includes details regarding the seizing, storing, appraising, advertising, and disposing of proceeds of wrecks. The wreck provisions are indeed archaic, time-consuming, and cumbersome. The age in which these types of commercial vessels is operated ended long ago, but the state legislature has not made adjustments to account for the disposal of pleasure vessels, which are much more common today. Today's pleasure boats have none of the value of the cargo from the time and the legislation were conceived. The modern reality has disrupted the equilibrium calibrated by Article 10, in which the salvage cost of the sale of a vessel compensated the public for the recovery. However, the sheriff still is required by law to follow the Article 10 statutory framework for the disposal and applicable shipwrecks. Even among cargo vessels, the economics of Article 10 appear to be unfavorable for the city. For example, The office seized the MV, the John B. Goodell, on December 11, 2012. The Goodell wreck was a 185-foot tanker discovered hard aground on October 29, 2012 in Richmond County as a result of Hurricane Sandy. The Goodell wreck was ultimately sold by the sheriff pursuant to a court order at a net loss of $10,501.89. This loss would have been greater if the Coast Guard had not towed the wreck at its own expense as an environmental hazard. The sea tow costs bore by the Coast Guard were estimated over $400,000. If the city were to seek to expand the range of vessels that the sheriff must collect, it would require additional resources in order to be successful. The city has facilitated the removal of marine debris from the water bodies within its jurisdiction. To provide context, the city, as a municipal corporation, is the single largest owner of shoreline throughout New York City and handles much of the marine debris that is not removed by the Federal Army Corps of Engineers or private property owners. Of course, this work is dependent on our ability to identify available resources and funding. In the wake of Superstorm Sandy, the city worked with the United States Federal Emergency Management Agency to secure funding for the removal of maritime debris throughout the 5 boroughs. The city was also the single largest recipient of a national competitive grant administered by the United States Department of Commerce, a National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration for Sandy-related marine debris removal. This grant allowed the city to complete millions of dollars of marine cleanup work citywide. To speed up work, the city's Department of Parks and Recreation secured a borough-wide marine debris removal permit from the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation in 2015, which has enabled the Department of Parks and Recreation and the New York City Department of Environmental Protection to remove over 4,500 cubic yards of marine debris over the last few years. Much of it is located throughout the southern Brooklyn and Jamaica Bay. A significant portion of this work has been made possible through discretionary funding provided by local city council members, for which we are very grateful. In addition to accomplish this work, the city, via Department of Citywide Administrative Services, established the city's first ever marine debris removal requirements contract in 2014. As funding becomes available, the standing contract with predetermined costs and requirements provides an immediate mechanism for any city agency to manage marine debris removals throughout the city as needs arise. I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak in front of you, and I turn it over now to my colleague in the Parks Department.
Thank you, Sheriff Miranda. That was very convenient. You've basically covered my testimony as well, so thank you for that. You've saved me for more Q&A, but I think Sheriff Miranda summed that up well and incorporated both our testimonies. So if there's anything from SBS, otherwise, we look forward to your questions and answers.
That was good and quick. I also would like to acknowledge the presence of my colleague, council member and Majority Whip, Sylvina Brooks-Powers. Also, I wanted to give a chance to her to talk about intro number 210.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you also to the committee staff for facilitating today's hearing. I'm glad to be here to speak in support of the bills we are discussing today. New Yorkers deserve a clean coastline. Our city consists of islands and coastal communities. 75% of council districts are on the city's shorefront. Maintaining a clean waterfront is a universal issue that benefits all of us, impacting our climate, public health, and tourism alike. Councilwoman Ariola and I are proud to represent the Rockaway Peninsula and City Hall. Our districts share Jamaica Bay, a gem among New York's natural preserves. Unfortunately, there are some bad actors that see the waters of Jamaica Bay as the perfect place to abandon their old boats and barges. Some owners just punch a hole in the hull and let the vessel sink. This marine debris is dirty and unsightly, and it destroys our local environment. New York needs a better way to keep our marine ecosystems clean. One of the main issues that my community has encountered when trying to remove boats is that the cost and logistical requirements of boat removal can be substantial, and multiple agencies at all levels of government have difficulty coordinating with each other to get the job done. We need to make it easier for boat owners to surrender their boats, but we also need to make it much clearer which agency is primarily responsible for the job. So I'm pleased to partner with Councilwoman Ariola on Intro 210, which will establish an office to coordinate the removal and recycling of marine debris from our city's waters, and to recommend new programs for people to surrender their boats for disposal. I believe this bill is an important step in tackling such a pervasive issue that impacts the environmental well-being many of our city's coastal communities face, all while offering educational opportunities. I look forward to hearing from the agencies on their perspectives and have a few questions. I've asked the agencies to describe the challenges that they currently face in coordinating boat removal. And boat abandonment occurs across the shorelines of all 5 boroughs. Do the agencies foresee any obstacles to implementation, like the wide geographic spread of the problem, establishing a central disposal site, or any other issues? And thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Majority Whip, Councilmember Brooks Powers. I have a few questions to administration, if you don't mind. So my first question is about statistics, pure statistics. They have an approximate number, how many abandoned vessels right now in our city's waterways?
Sure, I can speak to that, Councilmember. Thank you, Chair. Again, I'm Nate Grove, Chief of Citywide Waterfront and Marine Operations for New York City Parks. So, well, as we all know, New York City is an archipelago. We've got over 520 miles of linear shoreline here in New York City. That's more than Boston, Miami, Los Angeles, and San Francisco combined. So waterway debris finds its way onto our shores on an ongoing basis, particularly after extreme weather events. While there is no one singular agency or entity with the resources to consistently track the issue of marine debris citywide, the city does collaborate among its sister agencies, partner groups, as well as our counterparts at the state and federal levels in tracking issues as they arise. Parks, as stewards of 160 linear miles, or over 30% of New York City's shoreline, records waterway and shoreline debris throughout our park system. Our Natural Resources Group, who care for and maintain many of our natural areas, as well as our partner groups such as Jamaica Bay Eco Watchers, Jamaica Bay and Rockaway Parks Conservancy, Coney Island Creek Beautification Project, and the American Littoral Society, report instances of marine debris to us on an ongoing basis for tracking as well. Finally, we also communicate consistently with our partner agencies at the city, state, and federal levels. We are frequently in contact with the U.S. Army Corps, Coast Guard, and the National Park Service regarding marine debris issues. New York State Department of Environmental Conservation performs some on-water patrolling for environmental issues as well. We also receive reports from our emergency response agencies, NYPD Harbor Patrol and FDNY Marine Unit. So there are quite a few eyes and ears out on New York City waterways with whom we remain in frequent contact on these issues.
So you cannot give like approximate number right now?
Well, sure, Chair. We get asked that quite a bit. Unfortunately, most of it's just anecdotal. When you take into account,
But
again,
hundreds or thousands? We're talking about hundreds or thousands?
When you talk about marine debris, you've got thousands of cubic yards of debris out there, sure, and other large floatables.
So obviously the next question is, if someone notices floating barge or floating vessel for many weeks, months, and sometimes years, what is the next step? Probably calling 311. And then what agency? Parks, sanitation, small business services, sheriff. So what's going to happen next after this call by someone who see, because I was involved myself and it was a very long and tedious process.
Sure, and I think Sheriff Miranda summed it up well, or gave some of the landscape out there on our waterways, but I want to be clear, as it relates to our waterways, it's the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers who's responsible for responding to any floatables or obstructions that might pose a hazard to federally maintained navigation channels. We also discussed U.S. Coast Guard. They're mandated and have resources to address leaking fuels and oils. Coast Guard, however, does not remove nor dispose of vessels. So while the Army Corps maintains the aquatic highways, as it were, items outside of the federal channels, on the aquatic off-ramps, side roads, driveways, are the responsibility of the property owner. So you'll find city agencies, including Parks, Sanitation, and DEP, coordinate marine debris removals from all city-owned properties when possible, either via existing in-house resources or via private vendor contracting when funding becomes available.
I would like to acknowledge another colleague, Council Member Vicky Palladina. She is present online and she is participating in our hearing as well. My next question is like, after vessel is removed from the water, what happens next?
Sure. I can speak to that. Marine debris and other large floatables, once on land, need to be properly drained of all oils, antifreeze, and other synthetic fluids. This work must be done while preventing any fluids from leaking onto water or land. Marine debris is typically compacted into 30-yard dumpster containers and brought to a DEC-certified waste disposal location.
So, do you know approximately how much would it cost to remove one boat? And do you know, like, funding from what agency would be used? Again, Parks and Recreation, Sheriff's Office, Sanitation, because money involved, so who is paying for this?
Mm-hmm. Well, the cost depends on the means and methods that are employed. Like I described, much of the debris removal performed by the city is accomplished via in-house labor. So the Parks Department and Department of Sanitation, for instance, will, when possible, remove items that are reachable by land. In other instances, for larger items that are not reachable by land and require mobilization of on-water equipment, the city will seek to have the removals performed via private contract, funding provided. Mm-hmm. The cost and duration of the removal efforts are dependent upon the scope of the work. For a single item that is lodged on Pelham Bay Park shoreline and is threatening Orchard Beach swimmers, for instance, parks can often remove such items with existing in-house resources. For a larger cleanup effort, like the one Parks Natural Resources Group recently completed as part of the Forest Sparrow Marsh Preserve restoration in Mill Basin, the work can take many weeks and will often involve outside vendors with specialized equipment. One project that we teamed up with DEP, they were the lead agency, was due to a state-mandated environmental benefit project on order of consent, which involved the removal and disposal of several thousand cubic yards of marine debris and other large floatables throughout Coney Island Creek and multiple inlets off Jamaica Bay several years ago.
How much is a fine to the owner of the boat if you can identify whose boat is floating for months or maybe years? So how much is a fine today to this person if you know already the name and you identified who is owner of that floating boat?
Sure. Well, I want to be clear, whenever marine debris is discovered, the first thing we do is seek to locate the owner. If we can locate a registration number, for instance, we seek to identify the owner through the New York State Department of Motor Vehicles. But unfortunately, there are usually complicating factors that render it difficult to find an owner. So including that often people will physically remove any identifying markings, or such markings have just worn off naturally. So you asked about the fines. On city parkland, for instance, we have our Parks Enforcement Patrol, which can issue Environmental Control Board summons, ECBs, and they start at $1,100 depending on the number of infractions.
Okay. So it looks like a lot of agencies involved, but how many employees are involved in taking away to remove one abandoned vessel? Talking about like 5 people, 10 people, or more?
Well, we can take you out into the field at some point and you can get a look yourself. But it really, again, Chair, depends on what the scope of the work is, how difficult the item is to reach. There's all kinds of factors that you need to take into account, the ecological sensitivity of the area. So a simple item, like I described on, say, Pelham Bay Park, where our parks crews can get up there with their wreckers and their packers, hip waders, and drag it off, the shoreline there. That could take maybe 4, 5, 6 of our crew members to get that off the shoreline. Other more delicate work that might require on-water mobilization in ecologically sensitive areas, you can see a crew as big as 12 people, often private vendors working on that sort of job site.
Thank you. Do you make any outreach to boat owners today so they would know the dangers of abandoning the boat, the the price they will pay, that it creates not just inconvenience to everybody, but they will pay hefty fine. Do they know about it? Do you send some kind of notices, information, outreach?
We do. Parks, and I think that's why I tend to be the one speaking the most here, but parks, we have a dozen plus marinas located citywide. We also have dozens and dozens of kayak launches and human-powered boat launches. So we're the primary agency providing public boating opportunities here in New York City. Each year, we distribute clean marina and boating best practices to our hundreds of boating permittees. These materials are also available to the boating public via Parks Boating and Marinas section of our website. We also provide a list of vendors that can perform marine debris removal and disposal for anyone who requests it.
So I would like to ask a question to small business services, because not everybody knows that small business services involved in this process, especially when we are talking about selling these boats, getting some kind of money, not just spending taxpayers' money, but selling these boats if they're eligible to be sold. So what is the process? How does it work? How much money a year, for example, Department of Small Business Services in revenue bring into the city of New York from selling these boats?
Thank you, Council Member. And Small Business Services certainly shares the goals here of a clean waterfront. I would say we have not been in the business of doing those sales of boats. So you probably know Small Business Services for workforce development, neighborhood, and helping small businesses. But there is this last piece that we're a successor to the old Department of Ports and Trade, which was dissolved about 30 years ago, that left us with a waterfront permitting process and jurisdiction over city-owned waterfront property. And we do have some revenue from the permitting, but it's through this process that occasionally we will be made aware of debris, and we want to assist any way we can, and usually it's by contacting our sister agencies. I think as the sheriff's testimony and Nate Grove has made out here, it's a complicated process. We certainly have property under management too. If the property is on it, we'll work with our property managers at the Economic Development Corporation to address it, much in the way Parks does. And in the same way that the city does control a lot of the property, whether it's DEP, sanitation, SBS, parks. So as responsible property managers, they will generally address it.
As you know, Intro number 461 requires Department of Small Business Services to create and maintain a log of abandoned boats and their locations. Would you be able to do so? How difficult is it to have this information, like public information, specific log of all these abandoned boats? I would say inventory of abandoned boats.
Yeah, that would be a new one for us, certainly. Certainly we want to assist in achieving the goals here. It's something on the details, though, of that maintaining that log that we do want to talk further with the other agencies and maybe with council staff as well as how we can best accomplish the goals of that in terms of how much follow-up there is on that type of log, whether it would raise any of the questions that have been laid out under the state navigation law, and possibly, don't want it to complicate what we're already doing or having more agencies involved in the mix.
But do you support the idea of this main goal of this bill is to create such a log of abandoned boats and their locations in New York City?
I'd say we support the overall goal of getting the waterfront clean of this problem, but I don't know yet whether this is the best thing for it.
And do you have an idea how much will it cost to do it? Because I know it's expensive proposition, but still, it's much easier to have, much cheaper to do everything in order today than to create a situation when you cannot say what is going on and where and how much.
Yeah, that would have to be assessed in terms of personnel or OTPS, and also, I guess it reflects going out into the water a bit, which is a capability we don't have at the current time.
Thank you. So one more question, of course, about Intro 210, which requires mayor to create an office of marine debris disposal and vessel surrounding. Do you support this bill in general? Do you support this bill?
Well, I'll say that it's to be frank, it's a bit beyond. The creation of a new mayoral office is a bit beyond the purview of Parks, the sheriffs, or SBS. we wouldn't be specifically involved in the establishment of a new mayoral office. That said, thinking as you've heard today, we've demonstrated a clear commitment to this issue, and we look forward to further collaboration and ideas on how to continue to improve on this good work that we're doing.
Thank you. I strongly believe that you need coordination of all agencies and all efforts. It will help tremendously to coordinate not just inside the city of New York, but even with federal and state agencies that you mentioned today.
Coordination is extremely important for all the activities. Again, we're all in keeping with the goals. The goals are very important to clean the waterways. We understand that the challenges that we're facing. It does require us to, again, we're coordinating as it is on issues on an ongoing basis, on a case-to-case basis as they develop. And we'll continue that relationship and building forward.
Okay. So now I wanted to ask questions about skim boats. So do you know how many skim boats are currently clearing up cities' waterways? I saw some of them working, and particularly I saw at Shipshead Bay. But maybe you can tell us how many skim boats. I know that not so much.
Good afternoon. Yeah, we have 3 skimmer vessels. One's a 45-foot vessel, the other 2 are 60 feet that work pretty much 7 days a week. We skim CSO containments 1 to 2 times a week. So what we have is 23 dedicated CSO sites, that's combined sewer overflows, that we boom or have nets at. And this all came about after the ocean dumping ban of the late 80s, early 90s. You know, we stopped dumping in the ocean in the summer of 92, it was the end of June 92. And, you know, we had one problem licked, but there still was a lot of floatables in the water. So we did an analysis in the early 90s, and we found that if we dedicated booms at 23 of these sites, we would cover about 83,000 acres of drainage area around New York City. So since 92, when we started it, it certainly decreased the amount of floatables that we now capture with the skimmer vessels. I say the skimmer vessels don't do open water skimming so much. It's really for the dedicated CSO sites, though we do some open water skimming.
But so how many total of skim boats do we have today?
Three skimmer vessels. And
3.
3, and we have...
That's exactly what I said.
Yep.
It's definitely not enough. So how much is each skim boat, how much does it cost to operate one?
Well, we have one in procurement right now. It's almost $2 million.
$2 million to operate one skim boat.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I saw how they operate. Specifically, I saw myself at Shipshead Bay, I saw, and it's very effective. So 3 skim boats for the entire city of New York, that's clearly not enough.
No.
So clearly not enough.
No, and they're just dedicated to very small areas. You know, it's a giant waterway system. Yeah, it wouldn't be enough.
So the next question is like, it's already practically answered. How often these boats conduct their cleanup operations? If you have only 3 skim boats, so like how often can they clean a specific area?
So it depends on the site. Some sites have more debris than others. It depends on you know, the weather, rainfall mainly. So I would say 1 to 2 times a week we would do a cleanup at one of the 23 sites.
2 times a week in one area?
In all the areas, it would go out twice a week to clean.
Twice a week?
Yeah.
3 skim boats all over the New York City twice a week?
Just in the dedicated 23 CSO sites.
You want to add something?
Yes, no, I just wanted to make sure we confirmed to council that these are targeted facilities. The skim boats only target the combined sewer overflow netting or boom sites. These are very specialized vessels, as you most probably have seen yourself, with very small mouths. They're not really intended to pick up debris in open water. They're intended to go into the boom, raise their platform, and collect the material that's within the boom itself. They're also very long vessels. They're 60-foot long vessels, so they're not really maneuverable. So they're very targeted for these CSO facilities to remove those floatables, and they've been very effective in terms of targeting their mission.
Do you have any statistics? I'm a little bit biased because I'm from Southern Brooklyn and I represent Coney Island, Seagate. How many times did you clean up in Coney Island area? if ever?
Yeah, if there are some sites that really do not have any floatables, and we're with an agreement right now with the DEC to remove 4 booms within the next year, and we're gonna do open water skimming at these sites. But to answer your question, we've collected 2,000 cubic yards up until about 10 years ago, and now we're averaging closer to 350 cubic yards. So the CSOs don't collect floatables like they did in the past, and that's for a lot of reasons. Mainly, the street cleaning is much better now, and our catch basins are cleaned more often, so they don't have a chance, floatables, to get out into the waterway.
Have you ever raised this issue with council, with mayor, that you need more skim boats than 3 for New York City?
Allow me,
yeah.
if you don't mind, Kevin. The skim boats that we do have are really targeted for the CSO facilities. So the number of skim boats we currently have are adequate to meet our CSO cleanup needs. Part of the challenge with the waters around New York City with skimming vessels is that a lot of these skimming vessels are intended for lakes or streams, relatively calm waters. We're interested here in New York that we don't really have those very calm waters. We have this estuarine environment, and as a result, the technologies that are out there right now for skimming large surfaces are not really applicable to us. However, we do have an active research and development pilot that we started, and we're in the stages of procuring now, to test these smaller vessels that are far more maneuverable and can attempt to collect material that, as you can imagine, collects because of currents, because of the wind, in specific areas where these larger vessels cannot even enter those spots. So we look forward to telling you more as this pilot program matures.
Got it. Probably last question. So if someone see abandoned boat floating in any kind of waterways in New York City, and the person calls 311, what's happening with this call? Does it go to Parks and Recreation? Does it go to sheriffs? If person calls 311 to say, oh, I see floating old abandoned boat, what's happening next?
Not to usurp our friends at DEP, but I tend to be the recipient. Even on the train ride over, I was getting an email from Southeast Bronx, where we've done some work up there. So yeah, they ultimately 311 knows, and I do encourage the public to call 311. The appropriate city agency, the property owner, it typically gets routed to them. More often, it probably gets routed to Parks, and then we can work with our counterparts at the appropriate city agency to look into the issue. I also want to say, while we're in the public messaging domain, if it does seem to be a navigation risk, I'm also going to point out, again, Army Corps, they're great partners in this. Even if it isn't immediately, but it could present a risk if it were to come loose, they can be responsive. And then DEC has a 24-hour emergency hotline for any things in our waterways that are going to be an environmental risk as well.
Thank you. I would like to give a chance to my great colleagues to ask questions if you want.
Thank you.
So, Councilmember Ariola, please.
Thank you. I'd also like to thank Council Members Nurse, Councilmember Marte, and Councilmember Palladino for signing on to this bill as well. 25 council members in all thus far have signed on with majority whip powers and myself as prime co-sponsors. That's how important that this bill is to our waterways and to our city. Sheriff, you mentioned Navigation Law Article 10. So, to anyone of your knowledge, has the city ever reached out to the state to make revisions to the state navigation law that would allow the state to delegate municipalities to do the work? I'll take that as a no.
No.
Okay. From what I'm hearing, each of you have a responsibility for the waterways. Each of you has your own part in making sure that those waterways are cleaned, maintained, enforced, and logged. Even though some may not be doing it, you're still currently getting funding to be attentive to those waterways. Would that be a yes or a no? I know Parks does that. Nate, we've worked together on projects, and I want to thank you for the work that you do. I know a lot falls on you. So Sheriff's Office, DEP, Small Business Services, you are receiving funding because you are responsible for your portion of those waterways.
Well, thank you, Councilwoman Ariola. And I do want to underscore how appreciative we are for the assistance we have gotten from council. Your predecessor, yourself, it's really been a boost to our ability to get out there when we can find some of that funding available. But I want to be clear, and I think I can speak for my colleagues here. When you say we've received funding, it's, again, I think we deliver good results with the resources we have. I mentioned a lot of the in-house labor that we deploy to these sites. When you see big-scale projects happen, it's usually through federal funding. Hurricane Sandy, of course, was an instance, and Sheriff Miranda mentioned the NOAA competitive grant that we won the lion's share for. So we really try and use whatever resources are available. We think we do good work with those resources, and we appreciate the partnership of council throughout this as well.
Right, but although funding, well, we'll take away funding, you're budgeted, all your different agencies are budgeted for your portion of the responsibility to take care of the waterways. And yes, the council has been generous with discretionary money, which is the whole reason why we wanted this to become a dedicated program. So this way, you would have the necessary capabilities. So although no one from the agencies have reached out to the state about the navigation law, does anyone know if there's anything that prohibits the city from forming a vessel turn-in program? Is there any law that prohibits us from doing that?
Well, I do want to say that, you know, with respect to Sheriff Miranda's role, I don't think he's been part of any conversations at the state level, nor have I.
Yeah.
But I don't want to characterize or speculate on what current administration or previous administrations, how they may or may not have engaged at the state level on this. So I just want to be clear. I would imagine at some point, you know, at a legislative level, this issue has been discussed. No one here, unfortunately, has been part of those conversations, but I want to at least speak for Parks Department. We're happy to be part of any discussions at that level. I just don't want to speculate or speak for the administration or any previous administration. To your second question, council member, look, you know, in my involvement on the waterways and working directly with the public, the boating public, almost on a daily basis, I face this issue a lot, where people run into the challenge of maintaining a boat. The boats tend to be the last thing people get in good times and the first thing they get rid of in bad times. It's as we've testified, it's a complex issue. It touches many agencies and many parties. We're certainly, the idea of a vessel turn-in program, there's nothing in New York State like that. Would it be a benefit to the public when they're struggling to maintain these things rather than have them, you know, end up in our waterways, potentially reduce that? Sure, it would. But again, you know, it has its complexities, it has its nuances. So we're certainly supportive of proactive measures such as the ones we've been taking to date. I think anything that helps our waterways should be explored, should be discussed. And like any project, the more tools in the toolbox, the better. And we're always looking for ways to improve our operations and deliver better customer service.
Right, but maybe, it's okay? So just if anyone does know, I mean, is there anything that prohibits us? Perhaps that's something that we need to look into with council to see if anything that prohibits.
I just want to say one thing. When
forming
we
a
get no
vessel.
funding for the waterways in that project, we get involved in very particular circumstances. The Sheriff's Department is getting involved. So we don't receive any additional funding for any project on the water. But there are specific things in the law that require the intervention of the Sheriff's Department when it comes to the vessels and shipwrecks.
So it is part of your responsibility then?
For a very particular part of the navigation law, because of the way it's written, we have a particular role to play only in those circumstances, but we don't get any funding for our waterways whatsoever.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Ariola. It looks like we also can play a role in pushing state legislature, governor, to allocate more funding for these purposes, you know, to help this important effort. I would like to give a chance to ask questions to Majority Whip Councilmember Silvina Brooks Powers. Thank you.
Thank you again, Chair. Just to reiterate the questions asked before, can the agencies describe the challenges they have faced in coordinating boat removal? Also, boat abandonment occurs across the shorelines of all 5 boroughs. Do the agencies foresee any obstacles to implementation of Intro 210, like the wide geographic spread of the problem, establishing a central disposal site, or other issues?
So well, thank you for the question, Councilwoman Brooks Powers. I'll just reiterate that when you look at the layout of New York City, the archipelago that it is, that's 520 miles of shoreline. So in a quick answer, it's yes. You've got property owners, depending on which city agency. Parks Department, we have ultimately 30%, more than 30%, 160 miles of shoreline. So while, as I described that, and Sheriff Miranda in his opening testimony, Army Corps is really the primary go-to, but when it falls to the local property owner, it's typically the city. So in the spirit of us feeling like we have the obligation to mitigate any environmental or public safety risks, we mobilize to our shorelines and remedy these situations to the extent we have the resources to do so.
In that statement also kind of underscores the challenge that I've seen firsthand. Like right now, there's a barge in Far Rockaway that actually is my viewpoint out of my own window, but I get a lot of calls about it from the community. And we have literally attempted to engage the state, the Army Corps of Engineers. All levels of government locally are working together, but it just seems like a lot of finger pointing from the agencies. So the intent behind this bill is to help better streamline that process to have a much more expedient response to these barges and boats in the waterway that's abandoned. So I'm interested in understanding a little bit deeper, like what those challenges you foresee in the coordination of that, because I think the intent with the bill would pretty much create this office that would triage these matters and where it's city matter, handle it obviously, and then working across the different agencies.
So I don't want to steal from the sheriff's thunder, but again, as Sheriff Miranda mentioned in his opening testimony, ultimately, we're still bound by these somewhat anachronistic navigation laws at the state level. That's just the reality. We're certainly open to discussions on these topics. You just hit upon it as well, Councilwoman. I've been on some of those calls. I know the Vernon Barbados barges. It's a challenge. We agree with you. You've got Coast Guard involved. You've got Army Corps, state DEC on an environmental level. So our waterways, I'm going to steal from your colleague, are experiencing a renaissance like we haven't seen. I think as we continue to discuss these issues and look at solutions, we're going to continue to see improvements in these areas.
Okay, and okay, so I look forward to working with the various agencies on this, and we hope to get some of these barges out of the water sooner than later. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Majority Whip. Thank you. So it looks like we are wrapping up a testimony from administration. I would like to thank each one of you for your testimony. It was very educational and very useful, and I hope it shows to the public and to each one of us what should be done to make sure that our waterways are much cleaner than today. Everybody has a job to do. Thank you.
Thank you.
So now I would like to turn to public testimony. So we have some folks who came in person. I'm very glad that today we have this opportunity to do it in person. So I would like to give a chance to speak, by the way, for every person who wants to testify today. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. So every panelist who wants to speak now will be given 3 minutes to speak. correct, 3 minutes to speak. So I would like to call Robert Markuski, New York Harbor School. Okay. Before you speak, I want everybody to come also. Marcel Kernizan, also, please. Everybody else also? No, that's all 2 people. Okay. This way, we will save your time and our time. You will be able to testify. Okay. So I would like Robert Markuski from New York Harbor School to testify. You have 3 minutes, please.
The Committee on Resiliency and Waterfront, good to see you. Some of you I've seen before. My name is Robert Markuski. I teach Marine Affairs, Policy, and Advocacy at the New York Harbor School. The course I facilitate studies our natural resources and humans' impact on said resources, with the end goal of students creating a sustainable solution to complex intersections of the environment, culture, and economics. I'm speaking in support of 210, specifically in support of the last section. Coordinate with, promote organizations and volunteer groups involved in removing marine debris from the city's beaches and shores. In addition, I heard a lot about debris we can see today. We didn't really talk about much that we couldn't see. So I also believe that should be a focus as well. In addition, thinking about the behavior on land, which causes debris in the first place. So my recommendation is this. All across the city, specifically where I teach, we have young people collecting data, creating solutions to facilitate the success of bills like this. Literally, you have a community of young scientists, advocates, and future policymakers doing this work already. I ask that City Council consider consulting stakeholders that have no other vested interest in making this work, but for the environment, creating STEM education, and creating cultural and social equity. We have the duty to listen to young people doing the work of adults, nonetheless, the problems they inherit. Moreover, often done before the government takes any action. Governor's Island is in development of a climate solution center. I say this bill would be a perfect addition to this development. Implementing this law using the physical and intellectual infrastructure of Governor's Island and New York Harbor School has endless potential to engage the community and institutions already doing this vital work. Over the last few years, I've attempted to partner with government agencies and council members. It's proven difficult for a variety of reasons. I do understand the complicated process this holds, but I urge New York City Council, agencies, to reevaluate their capacity to have young people beside them doing the work and engaging the public. As I read my testimony, one could argue I'm selfishly trying to take resources from my institution to do a pilot program. What I'm saying is this: since the students at New York Harbor School do this work, Governor's Island is building a climate solution center. One would argue the stars are aligned, and that's a perfect place to have this office. Thank you for your time. Also, I'll end with this. It seems that coming to hearings and testifying in hearings alongside my students is becoming a great alternative to the classroom. So you'll be seeing us frequently. Thank you.
Thank you so much. As I understand, you were talking about students, correct? So we're talking about Marcel Kernizan, you're a student at New York Harbor School. Welcome.
Thank you, and good afternoon, members of the Committee of Resiliency and Waterfronts. My name is Marcel Kernizan. I'm a student of Marine Affairs. I'm one of Rob's students, and I came to speak in support of number 210. From my experience at the Harbor School, it's come to my attention that the amount of marine debris in the harbor is astounding. From bottles to ship lines to hypodermic needles and endless pieces of styrofoam. Thankfully, we do have some students that are part of the Harbor Seals After School Club picking up some of this stuff and writing data on it, but unfortunately, it's not enough. The amount of debris will most likely just keep rising and washing back up on New York City shores, especially as sea levels rise due to climate change. By creating an Office of Marine Disposal, it could begin to change this crisis and begin to control the amount of debris in the harbor, bringing our city a little bit closer to where it belongs, a world leader in sustainability. Many people are invested in restoring the harbor, and starting from scratch would be silly. Governor's Island has the space and the people to complete all sections of this local law. Students, teachers, island partners are already heavily engaged in this work. There is an after-school club that has been working on collecting marine debris since March and collecting data on said debris. This law can enhance STEM education, job creation, and community building, and also engage our most important stakeholders, the youth, engage in scientific research and political advocacy. Even nonprofits like Earth Matter and Beam Center can help facilitate art and repurposing projects. In addition, this will aid ideas for recycling. New York Harbor School has 7 CTE programs, and several of them are engaged in sustainability and cleaning our city. This law and implementation would both benefit our city and its educational pathways. Even nonprofits like Earth Matter and Beam Center, among many of our other partners, can help facilitate art and repurposing projects. You have organizations doing this work, invest in them, and pass the law. I quote, coordinate with and promote organizations and volunteer groups involved in removing marine debris from the city's beaches and shores. This is the most important part of the law, at least to me anyway. Working with the community and stakeholders will make this a success. My testimony may seem like we are trying to get exclusive rights to fund a pilot program. What I am saying is that all over the city, you have youth and nonprofits doing this work. It would be wise to consult them and consider Governor's Island as a testing ground for doing initial work. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you so much. Council member.
I just wanted to say I represent the Harbor School in my district, and they do phenomenal maritime work, whether it's with the Billion Oyster Project or even with reusable and recycling compost with Earth Matters. And so they would be a great partner with any city agencies to help us not only pass this legislation, but once it's enacted, to work in partnership with city. So I agree with what they said, and I'm a supporter of their initiative in this. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Marte. Thank you very much.
We appreciate the work that you do.
And thank you for your testimony.
I think you have some more that are virtually going to testify.
Yes, in person is much better, of course. And I can say that I often attend events in my district, in Coney Island. In Kaiser Park, we have a Coney Island Creek that Congressman Hakeem Jeffries is pushing, advocating to make as a super fund from federal government. And I see very often young students from all over the city coming, trying to clean up both park and creek, but creek is like, Coney Island Creek is like decades, of neglect, I would say. A lot of stuff is on the bottom and requires a lot of money and a lot of efforts by many agencies to clean up Coney Island Creek, including federal government. I would like to come back to some panelists who registered for our hearing, this time on Zoom. So I would like to give a chance to speak to Daniel Mundy, Jamaica Bay Eco Watcher. Your time.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to testify, and I'll try to keep it brief. My name is Dan Mundy. I'm the Vice President of Jamaica Bay Eco Watches. We're the longest serving not-for-profit working to preserve and protect Jamaica Bay. We were formed in 1998 when we had a major issue going on in the Bay with water quality. And we brought a Clean Water Act lawsuit against the city, which ended up being the nitrogen agreement. This was a massive $100 million agreement with the city of New York to make them bring the 4 treatment plants in Jamaica Bay up to speed. DEP's done a fantastic job with that. Much of the cleanup that went on in Coney Island Creek with DEP, and it was mentioned before, was a side note to that when they were imposed a consent order by the DEC. When we started to restore the wetlands and build out the loss of marsh that we had here with some of those funds, we started to notice this marine debris issue. Marine debris for us is defined as very large items. We do cleanups, but this is beyond the ability to do a normal cleanup. This is large issues like boats and docks and floats that need cranes and big equipment to remove. At the time, in 2004, 2008, between that period of time, we created a volunteer program to remove these large items. And we would go out with chainsaws and towboats that we would hire, and we would drag these boats over to the National Park Service hangar. They have an airplane ramp over there, and they agreed to tow those boats up. We removed 300 boats that way. It's the most that's ever been done in a voluntary program. It's extremely intensive and labor intensive and became almost too much. At that time, Congressman Anthony Weiner stepped in with funding and said, this is a great program, but I'm going to fund it. And he did, so we backed out. When the funding dried up, there was no program left in place, and Parks Department, U.S. Parks Department, National Parks Department did not want to re-engage with this volunteer program because of the fact that debris was ending up in Floyd Bennett Field, and they thought it was going to be a hindrance there for the kayakers. So nothing happened. After Hurricane Sandy, and I live in Jamaica Bay, I've been a resident of Broad Channel, the only inhabited island within Jamaica Bay for 57 years. We had thousands and thousands of boats and docks and oil tanks and gas tanks out on the islands and the shorelines. We worked with the American Littoral Society to document them. We didn't know how to get them removed. To the question posed by the chair before, if you call 311, for 99% of these vessels, nothing will happen. I've worked with the Corps of Engineers for 25 years. I've gotten 2 boats removed. They don't want to get involved with it. I don't really see a role for SBS or the Marshal's Service in here, even though history points to their involvement many years ago when there was a reason for it. We wanted to remove these vessels. I have thousands of pictures of huge boats and floats on these islands. We reached out to Councilman Ulrich, Councilman Constantini, and they became aware of the fact that the answer to the question is of who addresses this is no one. It's mind-boggling to me that we're out doing oyster restoration and wetland restoration.
Time has expired.
You can finish, yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. So there is no one. So the councilman then said, well, how do we do it? So Nate Grove has a fantastic program with this contract that he has that allows us, if we put money into it, to pay per linear foot to remove these vessels. And we did that with the councilman 3 times. And then when Councilwoman Ariola came on board, we explained it to her and she jumped right in. And I've met with Councilwoman Sylvania Brooks, who's a big advocate for the waterfront as well. And we were very aware of this giant barge that's out there. So we should build on the success that we have, in my own view, and work to see that we could create this agency. This is a fantastic step forward, and it's like the last area in the environmental world that we see that nobody addresses. So if we could get this funded with line items for positions, whether it's working under Nate within the city parks, we could address these big issues like that massive barge down there. That's an environmental justice issue. That's disgusting to see that's in the water down there, and it needs to be addressed. But we could address the entire city has this problem. I fly over the city on a regular basis as a battalion commander for the New York City Fire Department. My role at times is to fly in a helicopter. The North Shore of Staten Island, it's amazing. It's a graveyard of vessels that are out there. They get away with...
Thank you so much for your testimony. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
And Dan, I'd just like to thank you for your partnership and the partnership of the Jamaica Bay Eco Watchers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So the next panelist is Juliana Ventresca, Riverkeeper.
Time will begin.
Thank you, Chairman Kagan and members of the Committee on Resiliency and Waterfronts for your leadership and concern in addressing the pressing issue of abandoned boat and watercraft disposal, and for the opportunity to testify today on behalf of Riverkeeper. I'm Juliana Ventresca. I'm a legal intern for Riverkeeper. Riverkeeper is a member-supported watchdog organization dedicated to protecting and restoring the Hudson River from source to sea and safeguarding drinking water supplies through advocacy rooted in community partnerships, science, and law. We appreciate the committee's attention to the issue presented by abandoned vessels along the waterfront. This situation demands action in order to remedy the economic and ecological impacts that these abandoned vessels are causing for New York's waters and surrounding communities. Riverkeeper has had difficulty garnering attention and resources to remove marine debris in the past, and we fully support the enactment of both Intros 210 and 416 to decrease navigation hazards and improve water quality of local waterways. These watercraft can range from small dinghies to much larger commercial craft and fishing vessels with steel hulls, and even large bulk goods transport barges. Unattended boats and barges can be dangerous and damaging, as they have the potential to destroy habitats, leak pollutants, and present a hazard to human health and safety. Abandoned vessels in the city have been a hindrance to boat travel, making navigation especially dangerous when the abandoned vessels are submerged and difficult to see beneath the water, or when they were left afloat in the navigational channel. Abandoned boats and barges are also a significant source of pollution, releasing plastics, heavy metals, oil-related hydrocarbons, and other pollutants in the water. Certain chemicals and materials used to construct, protect, or decorate the vessels pose health risks when disturbed or when they become airborne. These chemicals also have the potential to contaminate local sediment, interstitial waters, and the water column, and ultimately they can harm important species in the ecosystem. Removing these structures would provide numerous environmental and community benefits essential to maintaining the health and safety of New York's waterways. In the past, riverkeepers had difficulty getting abandoned barges removed. In 2015 and 2017, we mounted removal efforts that led to a lot of agency finger-pointing and no clear path to getting these removed. Therefore, legislative clarity is important in this instance. These situations can take years to remedy as a result of the complicated legal framework posing an unnecessary burden on city officials and community members in effecting swift removals. Clearly, the situation demands legislation that will aid the process of removing abandoned vessels. As there are already numerous abandoned barges and boats impeding navigation and actively contributing to pollution, it is essential that the city officials develop effective programs for dealing with these vessels quickly, without unnecessary legal hurdles. Therefore, Riverkeeper enthusiastically supports the passage of Intro 461 and Intro 210. Thank you for your consideration of Riverkeeper's testimony. We look forward to continuing to work with you to ensure that New Yorkers' health and waterways are protected against the effects of abandoned boats, barges, and marine debris.
Thank you so much, Juliana Ventresca. Thank you very much for your work and for your testimony. So the next panelist is Roger Gendron, the New York Hamilton Beach Civic Association. The New Hamilton Beach Civic Association.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. My name is Roger Gendron, the president of the New Hamilton Beach Civic Association, and I'm speaking today in support of Intro 210, a local law to create a marine debris disposal and vessel surrendering office. So imagine you're driving down a highway and littered with broken down vehicles spread willy-nilly all across the roadway. This is the exact situation in and around New York City waters, such as Jamaica Bay, and all throughout the city. The abandoned and sunken boats we see in these areas are more than just an eyesore. The environmental impact they cause may not be measured for quite some time. The proposed legislation that would create the Office of Marine Debris Disposal and Vessel Surrendering would be a great step forward in helping keep our waters safe for the boating community to enjoy and to keep the push going for cleaner and healthier waterways throughout the city, most especially our beaches where debris can wash up along the shore and as it's seen right now. To have an office that would be responsible for disposing of abandoned vessels while at the same time developing a program to encourage owners to dispose of their boats through the city rather than abandon them in the water is a win for everyone who enjoys boating or swimming in the beach. We're all aware that the boats are constructed using various synthetic materials and solutions, and in time many of them leak chemicals to create a toxic environment. Here are a few examples. Cleaning agents like detergents accumulate in the sediment, which are broken down by microorganisms. These reduce the oxygen content in water, impairing wildlife growth. Battery acid easily dissolves in water, increasing an environment's natural acidity or alkalinity, and most marine wildlife requires specific pH, and changing that level can decimate an entire region. Oil, gasoline, and other fuel products affect wildlife in dozens of ways, from killing environments outright to causing cancer, birth defects, and behavioral changes in both aquatic and human life. And zinc, copper, and other metals that make up the boats can chip off and dissolve in water, and they are impossible to remove from the environment that they contaminate. And when ingested, they can decimate marine life and plants. When abandoned vessels decompose, they release these substances as more. Substances that can destroy natural environments, such as marshes and marine forests, which are natural defenses that coastal communities like mine rely on to protect us from coastal storms. Without this protection, we're endangering humans in these areas. Here's a simple scenario. Someone owns a boat. They decide it costs too much money to maintain it, to keep it docked, so they set it free. They just let it float out because they figure it'll sink and it'll become a reef. And they manage to convince themselves that this is good, but we all know that it isn't. Now just imagine if they could bring it somewhere or call somewhere and dispose of it safely. So safety on the water is of the most importance. Any boater will tell you any obstacle in the water poses a serious threat. Human debris can get tangled in motors and other debris in or on the water and destroy a boat that hits it. Abandoned boats are particularly dangerous since they move without rhyme or reason while drifting on the surface, or worse, when bobbing beneath the water and they can't be seen.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Thank you.
Thank you, Roger, for all you do in the community and for being such a wonderful partner.
Thank you, Joanne, and thank you to the City Council.
Thank you. So, and the next panelist is Mauricio Gonzalez. Mauricio Gonzalez.
Good time over here.
Okay, can you all hear me?
Yes. Please.
Okay, I have two students with me, and I'm going to ask them to present first. And if there's a little bit of time, then I'm going to jump in. I work at the Harbor School, and I'm going to introduce to you Anna Sheehan and Arlo Kane.
Hello, Chairman. I'm sorry. My name is Anna Sheehan, and I'm a junior at the New York Harbor School within the Marine Biology and Research Program. I work as a junior leader and analyst within Harbor SEALs, a civic science after-school program. I'm testifying in favor of the intro number 210 bill. Our current project within Harbor SEALs is the RIPRAP project, a data collection and environmental cleanup procedure. The goal of the project is to gain a data-oriented understanding of the trash that washes up on Governor's Island's rocky coast. We have developed methods for collecting, organizing, and storing samples compiled. This includes weighing the samples, classifying the materials, and later disposing of them. This project originated through a collaborative effort between Harbor SEALs and Earth Matter. After years of noticing the overwhelming amount of debris on Governor's Island, students took initiative to clean and record debris washed up on this historic land site's border. Without an accessible office or organization to collect marine debris, and without strict reinforcements of laws, waste will continue to wash upon our shore and will be detrimental to the health of our harbor and its surrounding inhabitants. Since Harbor SEALs began collecting debris 1 to 2 times a week in March, we have been overwhelmed by the amount of debris, especially by foam and plastic. The timeline and resources of this project only allowed for a minimal amount of Governor's Island to be searched for debris, and the tide often affected whether or not debris could be picked up. Keeping my last statement in mind, it is critical to realize that hundreds of plastic bottles, thousands of pieces of foam were found, and hundreds of plastic scraps and pounds of boating line. It's disturbing that marine debris continues to be a pressing issue, but I can confidently say that it is through this law that environmental education can be promoted and that New York Harbor can get steps closer to being restored. Thank you for your time.
Good afternoon. My name is Arlo Kane. I'm a junior in the Marine Biology Research Program at Harbor SEAL's after-school program in the New York Harbor School. I work in communications and data analysis for the Marine RIPRAP project. I'm speaking in support of intro number 210. In my experience collecting and organizing marine debris as a part of the Harbor SEAL's RIPRAP project, we have encountered the result of excessive and unjustified waste from government and independent property. For example, fishing boat lines, smoking apparatus, and grounded cups and bags. Without the creation of an office responsible for marine debris disposal, there would be an alarming increase in trash washing up on New York shores. One of the most overwhelming categories of debris the Harbor SEALs managed or measured were boat lines. These boat and fishing lines can be very harmful to local ecosystems and animals. For example, one piece of debris found a dead bird wrapped in fishing line. However, above all else, it is important to pay attention to the kind of debris we cannot see with our own eyes. Microplastics will affect the harbor's ecosystem on a fundamental level and will continue to be introduced as long as marine debris like rope, single-use plastic bags, and other single-use plastics are in our harbor. Through the Marine Biology Research Program, we have found that microplastics have...
Time's expired.
You can finish the sentence. You can finish.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Through the Marine Biology Research Program, we have found that microplastics outnumber phytoplankton very consistently.
Thank you so much. And thank you for being such a tireless and passionate advocates for our marine lives, for our waterways, for our environment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So now I would like to turn over to our counsel, to our committee, Jessica Steinberg-Albin.
Thank you, Chair. If we have inadvertently missed anyone that is registered to testify today and is yet to have been called, please use the Zoom raise hand function, and you will be called in the order that your hand has been raised. Seeing none.
Mauricio Gonzalez has his hand up.
Oh, thank you. Mauricio Gonzalez, you may begin when the sergeant calls time.
Did they call time? Okay, so I'm just going to dig in here. We thank you and the council for doing the hard work of keeping our democracy and great city alive and healthy. My name is Mauricio Gonzalez, and I've taught marine biology at the Urban Assembly New York Harbor School and the Frederick Douglass Academy since 2001. I started teaching in New York City to do the heavy lifting of empowering the next generation of environmental stewards and change the culture of excess and disposability that has plagued our natural environment and city for the last century. Our students monitor the harbor for contaminants, such as microplastics and their impact on plankton. We're literally eating our fashion as the microplastics go up the food chain. They monitor chemicals in the water. They recover marine debris washing up on the shores of Governor's Island, and much, much more. The ocean has a really strange way of covering up all of our debris. We do the impossible work of teaming up with dozens of organizations in these endeavors while preparing our scholars for college and career. What better hope for a young person than to be able to make a difference in their world so that they can have hope and a reason to look forward to their own futures? We deeply believe in our work and the role of our city as a beacon of responsible business and environmental stewardship for the world. I ask the City Council to consider, in addition to the aforementioned initiative and resolutions, which I support, 1, to consider adding the term externalities to the list of terms and set up a vehicle by which to study how to tackle the issue of marine debris from this perspective. In other words, once debris is found and we can identify the producers, we may want an avenue by which to approach them to become a visible part of the solution. Handing off externalities to the public or the government in the form of volunteer work and other measures is insufficient to change the tide. And 2, address the assumption that consumers are knowledgeable and capable on their own to dispose of all the forms of waste that run off into our waters every second of the day. Dedicating resources to public outreach for the creation of campaigns and signage that strengthens consumer responsibility would be critical for such an office. So we look forward to the creation of the Center for Climate Solutions on Governor's Island so that we can take our city and region to the next level of climate change solutions and empower our next generation of climate stewards.
Thank you so much.
So thank you all for hearing this testimony and for a clean harbor.
Thank you so much. So I would like to make my closing remarks. First of all, I would like to thank all members of administration for appearing today, testifying, informing the public about this important topic of making sure we have clean waterways, clean, beautiful, and safe. I also would like one more time to praise my amazing colleagues, Majority Whip Brooks Powers, Council members Ariola, Marte, Nurse, Paladina for participating in hearings today. I also would like to thank our Senior Committee Counsel Jessica Steinberg-Albin, Senior Policy Analyst Patrick Mulvihill, Senior Finance Analyst Jonathan Seltzer, and my Legislative and Budget Director Acher Termizi for all the hard work to prepare to put together this important hearing. In the conclusion, I would like to say that it's a goal for everyone, and it looks like everybody is in favor of these new bills that my colleagues are introducing. I'm talking about intro number 210 and 461. It will improve our coordination between city agencies and elected officials, between city and state and federal agencies. It's everyone's effort. We live in a beautiful city, in the capital of the world, and we have so many miles of waterways, and we all have responsibility to make sure, again, they're clean, beautiful, and safe. So I would like to thank each one of you for participating in today's hearing, and I would like to close this hearing.